To try to establish that drinking dirty water actually caused cholera, John Snow used another map. This is a map of a region of London. Water to that area was supplied by two water companies, Southwark and Vauxhall, also known as S&V, and Lambeth. The River Thames runs through London. S&V drew its water downriver from where sewage was discharged into the river. So its water was contaminated with whatever was coming out of the sewage pipes. The Lambeth Company's water was drawn upriver from the sewage discharge, so its water did not contain sewage. What John Snow did was he looked at this region of London where both the companies supplied water, one to one house, one to the next house, and he compared the death rates due to cholera in the houses of the two companies. Comparison is a fundamental technique in establishing association and certainly causation. The treatment group receives the treatment, which in this case you can think of as dirty water. The control group does not receive the treatment. Let's think of the control group as the people drinking water from the Lambeth Company, the clean water. John Snow simply counted how many people died of cholera in the regions served by both companies, but the crucial observation that he made was that the houses served by the two companies were similar apart from the water company. In what he called his grand experiment, he wrote, "There is no difference whatever in the houses or the people receiving the supply of the two water companies or in any of the physical conditions with which they are surrounded. The only difference was the water company. The two groups were similar apart from the treatment." And this is what gave him the confidence to conclude that if he saw differences in the outcomes for the two groups, then those differences could be ascribed to the water, because there was no other difference between the two groups. So what were the outcomes for the two groups? Here is John Snow's table. Take a moment to look at this table and see what you think about the two companies and the death rates from cholera. Here is the row corresponding to S&V. Remember that this is the company that drew its water downriver from the sewage discharge, and Lambeth had the cleaner water. John Snow also carefully compared the rest of London. I suggest pausing the video and thinking about what this table says. We will discuss the results after a countdown. 3, 2, 1. Look at the cholera deaths. 1,200 from S&V, 98 from Lambeth, but not a fair comparison because many more houses were served by S&V than were served by Lambeth, so the number of deaths being larger for S&V isn't really a smoking gun until you notice that even when you adjust for the total number of houses, that is when you take 1,263 and divide by this 40,000 something, you get a death rate per 10,000 houses that is almost 10 times as much as the corresponding rate for Lambeth. The finger is pointing at SNV. It is pointing at the dirty water. This was as close to proving causation that John Snow could come to. The key was not only that this rate of deaths under SNV is 10 times the rate under Lambeth, but that the two groups were as similar as possible, apart from the treatment. Had the people receiving SNV water been different from the people receiving Lambeth water in some other way as well, then it would not have been so clear which of those two differences were responsible for the effect. It is interesting to note that in John Snow's lifetime, the English medical establishment did not accept his reasoning. The miasmatists still ruled. Indeed, while John Snow was looking at the evidence from the 1854 cholera outbreak, a scientist called Pacini in Italy had in fact identified the Vibrio, the bacterium that causes cholera. But nobody listened to him either, because Italy had its miasmatists. Decades later, the Vibrio was identified in Germany, and people had a better understanding of how diseases spread. But Snow's experiment, which was a natural experiment in that he did not decide who would get water from which company, he just observed what was there. Snow's experiment was key to establishing causality by comparing two groups that were similar apart from the treatment and then looking at the difference in the two sets of results.